Will you pray with me? Loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts and minds be pleasing to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So this month, all during January, we're focusing on why would somebody go to church when church isn't part of their lives already. Some people go as kids and things happen in church. Either they just get too much of it or they get turned off by it. And there's some wounding religions out there. So they aren't coming. And then there are people who these days have just never known church. It wasn't part of their family life. And so for those folks, why would they come? Well, as we were preparing to celebrate the leaders in the congregation and start a focus on leaders, this idea of being a light on the hill seemed like one of those reasons to me that all of us have, I believe, this feeling of wanting to make a difference, that no matter how much we may cover it up with other things, this idea of wanting to have made life worth something, made life mean something, is planted on the hard drive for everybody. And so church is a place where people can go and their lives can make a difference. So I was trying to put that sermon together because that would be a good sermon, but I just kept running into problems. And the problem is that for many people who don't go to church, the church is not a clear beacon of light. So it's not like you think, oh, that's where I'm going to go so that my life will matter and I'll make a difference. Because unfortunately, any day, on almost any news outlet, you're going to hear some wheels off crazy thing that somebody's doing in the name of Christianity. A while back, Haiti was going through terrible, cataclysmic stuff, and one of the big Christian leaders with a big following said, well, back when they were trying to get out from under the French, they made a pact with the devil. And so now they're just reaping like a literal pact with the literal devil, and that's why things are bad in Haiti, and therefore we shouldn't really help them. That was like actual from a Christian leader. Back a little bit, Katrina, there were Christian leaders saying it's because there are gays and lesbians in New Orleans, and that's why God has smote New Orleans. I will tell you that turns a lot of people off of the whole idea of Christianity. And y'all know, those are just examples. You've heard plenty yourselves. Even things like, thanks to God because my football team won. God was with us. Well, here's the thing. I've said that stuff too, but that's actually the very definition of blasphemy, and we're not supposed to take the Lord's name in vain. We're not supposed to give God credit for stuff, because then we get into this problem of God likes my country or my football team better than yours, and we just end up in a big human mess. So all of that stuff, people out there see hypocrisy. They see Christians standing for hateful positions. They see Christians standing against other people or wanting to control other people in all kinds of ways. And they just think, no, thank you. We don't seem like a light on the hill to them. But I do think that a lot of people find Jesus really compelling. Like if they look at the Gospels and they hear about who Jesus is, this idea of self-sacrificial love, that beautiful life of Jesus's, that's compelling. What's not compelling is organized religion. You guys have heard people say, I'm spiritual but not religious, and I'm not into organized religion. I like to go hiking. Wow, do I get that. Out in nature, it's just me and God and none of anybody else that could make me feel upset. It's kind of nice that way. The problem is we don't actually grow in Jesus Christ. No matter what anybody says, the most effective way to keep growing and keep aligned with Jesus Christ, and not just on your own idea of it, is to keep coming to worship regularly. Keep coming and refreshing yourself in this thing and being with each other. That's how we actually grow. But a lot of people don't want anything to do with it. So, how do we get those folks to think about church? The most honest answer that I have for you today may not be totally satisfying, but the most honest answer I know is that you guys invite them. You've heard that before. Inviting is the number one way. But you have credibility with your own friends. friends that are unchurched or have rejected it. And if you tell them, I know organized religion, but we can't speak for everybody else out there, but we can at least speak for ourselves at Genesis. And you can say, look, we've got lots of flaws too, but we're really trying. We are reaching out to people who are refugees with our JFON program, immigrants with ESL. We're reaching out to the homeless. Our youth, you guys may know this, but our youth are building relationships with the mosque here in Fort Worth. The youth from the mosque are going to come over on the 22nd, and then our youth are going to go over there on the 19th of February just to get to know each other and just hang out, and then hopefully build towards doing a service project together. This is coming off of them inviting us, the whole Genesis family, to a Ramadan meal last year that was wonderful. So we are out there, we're doing it, we're giving it our best shot. But again, we can't speak for all Christians everywhere. There are churches out there that will not talk about the truth because they're afraid of losing pledges, and I get that. There are churches out there that preach hatred for people because they're different. Gay and lesbian folks or Muslim folks. That's all happening. But again, we can control a little bit what's going on in here. And we are doing our best to love God and love our neighbor. So let's imagine that you've brought somebody in who's a spiritual refugee and they would long to be part of a community. The best we can do is show up authentically as ourselves. And I got to thinking, maybe in these times, maybe we're the brightest light on the hill when we're the most authentically flawed, but really trying. When we're asking for God's help, although that can make us seem weak. And I think that that's a real problem that we need to confront. Here in our culture, again, I don't know about any other countries in the world. All I know is America. And I know that here in America, there's this issue with strength. And I'll show you an example of it that's sort of played out lately. Going back a bit, I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter. And when Jimmy Carter was, I think he was just being elected, or maybe he was president, he said that he had committed adultery because he had lusted in his heart. Some of y'all may remember that. And so he owned that. He owned that he'd felt that and that he needed to be accountable for it as part of his faith. Well, the reaction to him wasn't, what do you mean you lusted in your heart? It wasn't so much that as it felt kind of wussy. It felt weak to people. It felt just something about it made people kind of squirm. So now, more recently, we've had politicians who talk pretty openly about aggressively sexually abusing women, and that's sort of okay in some way. Again, not because that action was okay. If you asked any person, they would say that's not okay. But it's a sign of strength. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like the strong man, locker room talk is what the strong man does. Chew on that if you don't see what I'm saying. There's an issue in our culture with strength and the image of strength, and we will go for that over something that looks weak. And so where does that leave us? Because one of the fundamental ideas, the bedrock stuff in Christianity is that the strong are weak and the weak are strong, and we are supposed to be the ones who are weak. The first may be last, the last may be first. In our weakness, we are strong, but God makes the strong foolish. All of that, turning that over, it is like a drumbeat through the New Testament. We're supposed to be weak. But I think that doesn't mean just, come run over me. I don't think that that's what it means. I think that it has something to do with vulnerability and being willing to admit that we don't have it all together, that we need to learn and grow. And so I'm going to give you an example of that, and that example is race, because it's something in our culture that we're dealing with all the time, we're going to be perennially dealing with, and tomorrow is Martin Luther King's birthday. So let's take race as an example. Conversations about race are really tough. There is a commentator that I love named Jay Smooth. We've talked about him in church before. He has a TED Talk that I commend to you. But he talks about how to talk about race. And one of the things that he says is that if someone says to me, hey, that thing you said, I think that's kind of racist. What I hear most of the time is, hey, you are a racist. And I'll feel like I want to reject that because I'm not. What Jay Smooth tries to get us to do is think of this as this either or thing. If someone tells you that thing you did is racist and you go to, like, my personhood has been besmirched, you're saying I am a racist, we can't listen, we can't grow. He calls that the tonsil model of, I've had my tonsils removed. You say, that thing you just said, I think that's racist. And you reply, but I had my racism removed in 2005. It can't be true. There's no growth that can happen. So he says, think of it differently. Just recognize that in our world, all of these inputs, all of this stuff that's coming at us from every direction, we're constantly having to deal with racism that could crop up in all different ways. So don't think of it like tonsils, my tonsils are out. Think of it like dental hygiene. So like when somebody comes up to you and they say, oh, you've got something in your tooth. You don't respond, what do you mean something's in my tooth? I'm a clean person. No, you take care of business. And if you're like me, you get horribly embarrassed, like convulsed with embarrassment, and then you take care of business. Nobody likes it. Here's the thing. If someone says to you, hey, I think that thing you said, I think that's racist, and I know you don't mean it like that. If they say that, you're going to feel defensive because nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be wrong. But here's the thing about learning and growing and being willing to be vulnerable. If you say, oh gosh, thank you for telling me, and you deal with it, then you're better. But if we have this idea that we have to be perfect, are y'all glad I didn't sneeze right into the mic? See how flawed? Just terrible. No, but if we have this idea that we have to be perfect, then we can't let in any information that might get in the way of that. So you think of it like that. So I absolutely hate it when somebody says to me, there's that thing in your teeth, there's toilet paper on your shoe, I can see your bra, whatever it is. Y'all know all those things. All of them, I hate that. Or there's a booger in your nose, oh Lord. It's horrible. But I'm kind of glad because if nobody says it and at the end of the day I look and I'm like, what? I've gone through my whole day and nobody told me, then I'm kind of mad at y'all if somebody doesn't tell me. So it's a weird push-pull, right? It's the same thing. If somebody's able to say to you, hey, I think that thing you said, now they may say it in a more aggressive tone, but we as Christians have to be willing to learn and grow. Just step back and look. Talk to somebody who may have a different insight. See, that's how we grow and that's how we get better. We're going on to perfection, but we don't pretend to be perfect now. Well, sort of in the same way, if I run into one of y'all and you have a booger in your nose or your fly's undone or any of that, I kind of don't want to tell you because I'm embarrassed and I'm afraid you'll be embarrassed and I'd rather just like look away, just But you know what? It's a loving thing to do. To say, I heard somebody one time about the booger thing, go up, bat in the cave. That's a little bit easier than big old booger in your nose. So, really, I promise this actually does have to do with race. If you just approach it as this stuff, you're going to hear this stuff, and we need to be willing to say, if somebody tells a joke, and maybe they don't even realize. Y'all have heard me say before, for years as in my childhood, I called Brazil nuts something else that's a horrible racial term. And it wasn't until somebody said to me, in fact, it was my new stepmom, and I said that, would you pass those to me? And she said, that offends me. And I said, well, you can have them then. I just didn't get it at all. And then I realized and I learned and I grew, and it's a process, right? But I didn't know. So we're in a position, but it is the reason that it's so convulsively embarrassing, I think, is because it's so vulnerable. It's like, oh, it's weakness. And in our culture, weakness is not okay. So we have to overcome that and be willing to be teachable. We have to be willing to say to somebody, hey, that thing you said, I think that's racist, and I bet you didn't mean that way. And then they may say, oh, yes, I did, and then you know. But a lot of times they'll be like, what? No. And if they go to, but I'm not a racist, you can say, oh, I know that. It's just that thing you said or that thing you did. It's a big difference. So by focusing on the very fact that we're trying to be good, this love God, love our neighbor, we're giving it our best shot. I feel like if people come in and they're looking for something, they want to connect with Jesus, if they see that we're just authentically flawed but trying, there's room to breathe. That they feel like, okay, this is a place where I might grow. This is a place where I want to hear something more. And so we keep moving forward together, learning and growing together, taking risks for love, living wholeheartedly. And in our vulnerability, our teachability, we're so strong and brave, and we become more like Jesus, and folks find a place alongside us. May it be so. Amen. We can't do